Hi, my name is Sabrina Neal, and I'm going to be talking to the senior management team at Portland Parks and Recreation Department. I'm going to start with talking about where Portland Parks and Recreation is now. First, the 5-year racial equity plan. It's a great plan, and here are some of the goals that are in it. End disparities in city government, hiring, and promotion. Provide equitable access to city services to all residents, and meet or exceed citywide contracting goals to minority business enterprises. Those are just a couple of goals that you all know about. What's great about this is that it was required that senior management read this, and it was required that senior management begin to look internally at the implementation of this. That's where we are now with the racial equity plan. Secondly, the required readings for new employees when they first come on. They're required to read all the policies and comprehend or try to comprehend what's in it. Third, on the website, it notes that employees, or I guess anybody, could call the equity and inclusion manager if they have any conflict, if they have any concerns, if they just have anything to say. So now I want to shift gears a little bit and look at some of the problems that may arise from some of the practices that are currently in place. Sticking to the rule of 3, I'm going to give you 3 examples. It's unrealistic for new employees to fully grasp and comprehend the amount of documents and policies that are in the required readings when you first get on. It's a lot. It's too much. Second, there's not too many trainings. During my time there as an intern, I was under the impression I wasn't required to take one training where one of the topics was microaggressions. One of my fellow colleagues had then asked me, "Hey, how was the training? What did you learn?" I said, "Oh, I learned about microaggressions." And he said, "What's that?" He was not required to take that training. It was not across the board that everybody takes certain trainings. Third, how do I deal with conflict? You would assume you would talk to your HR, or you would talk to the equity and inclusion team. During my time there, I did not know who the HR person was. I did not know who I would go to if I had a concern. And the equity and inclusion team, the practices that they hold now are that they approach somebody in the open space. It was on a whim. "Hey, do you have any issues?" It was an open space. Anybody could hear the conversation, and there was no privacy. I would now like to shift gears into my recommendations. Now that we see what's going on now, some of the problems that may arise from it, what are some of the recommendations that I'm able to offer you? And I'm going to split this up into 2 of being proactive and being reactive, because conflict is going to arise. There are going to be issues, and we have to know how to answer to them, but we also have to know how to be proactive before they even arise. For the proactive side, come up with a standard for the racial equity team. What is their standard for when they approach people? However they decide who they approach, unfortunately, I was not able to find out how they decide that. Make sure it is in a private setting. Hold a small meeting. Have that meeting be mandatory for people so there's no suspicions arising of, "Oh, that person's meeting with the racial equity team. Something's going on." Have it be every couple months they check in with certain employees there. That is a great implementation that could be proactive to before conflict arises. In addition, senior management needs to speak with their divisions. It's great that senior management is required to read this 5-year racial equity plan. It's great they meet with the director, but do they relay that information down to the people below them? That is important because every employee in this department needs to feel empowered to know information, to know how to handle conflict. Third, there needs to be mandatory trainings. I have suggested twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. Some of the various topics could be leadership, microaggressions, conflict management. Those are just some examples of the different topics that could be held during these trainings that should be mandatory across the board for all employees, no matter if you've been there for 10 years or you were only there to do a summer internship. Now, if we look at the reactive side of it, how to deal with conflict. If, according to the article, How to Deal with Harassment and Discrimination Complaints, there are steps that need to be taken to properly handle conflict that arises in the workforce. These consist of listen to the accuser, take the complaint seriously, not to retaliate against the accuser, keep the complaint confidential, do not delay in conducting an investigation, conduct a thorough investigation, document the investigation, and if necessary, hire a third party to conduct the investigation and discipline a guilty party. Unfortunately, during my time there, I did hear about employees who felt like a manager was not disciplined strictly because that person was a manager, was in a leadership position. That's not okay. And that is not what is said here in the How to Handle Harassment and Discrimination Complaints article. This is something that needs to be reiterated to employees. So there should be trainings on conflict management every 2 years. That is required across the board, from senior management to the frontline staff. If you're already here, you have to take it. And then from this day going forward, there needs to be a reminder, just like the sexual harassment requirement training for college students every couple years that we have to take. It should be the same way, and it should be required. Second, have info on policies easily accessible. Once you're a new employee and you read that, where do you find it again? It took me a long time to try to find those policies, and it shouldn't. It should be right there on the employee website, easily accessible. If you need to find information, if you have questions, if you want to read it after you're already hired on, you go through your quick hour session of skimming through everything, that information should be easily accessible for you to use, for you to understand. The third is the implementation of the racial equity plan. It is great that we're requiring senior management to start to think about it, but this needs to be a bureau-wide thing. Senior management should be required to work with everybody that works for them in seeing how can we realistically implement this. And I'll give some examples. If we touch on affirmative action, we need to actively seek diverse candidates and people. As a bureau, whether it's going to colleges, going to organizations, actively seek. Reach out to East Portland. East Portland is one of the most underserved communities in Portland, and we need to actively work with East Portland, gain more information from East Portland. Thirdly, we need to have more diverse partners. So the companies that we partner with cannot all be from one culture. They need to be diverse so we can have a well-rounded workforce, community, and the people we're partnering with if we really want to make a real effort. And again, this needs to be a requirement of the entire division. The director needs to take the leadership to say, not only do I want my senior management to think about implementation, I want everybody in the bureau to think about implementation. Again, we are doing some things great. We have some problems that we should definitely work on, and I've given ways to be both proactive and reactive if something were to arise. Thank you.